What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Android format video. And in this video, I'm going back to the sort of Beast Spellcaster Good Stuff deck and trying out a new tech in the deck that was suggested to me by Discord user Blah in the YGO from Zero Discord. Link to that Discord is in the description below. As always, it's a great place to find games in all these obscure and underexplored formats. But they suggested adding in Nimble Momonga as an interesting tech card. So I thought that this was an interesting idea. We brainstormed ways to fit it into the standard good stuff sort of deck and what to potentially cut. In the end, we ended up cutting one copy of Gemini Elf, one copy of Kaiku, and one Cannon Soldier from the list that I showed off the last time I approached this deck. And I think that these are probably the best cards to swap out. With the Momongas, you potentially get more consistency in your deck, as one Momonga will fetch out the other two, and thus you'll be able to draw into your beaters more often. And Cannon Soldier is kind of like a card that isn't as good this format as it was in previous formats, and I think it is potentially cuttable as it's not necessary anymore. With Sangan and Witch both at one copy, it's a lot harder to search out at the end of the game to go for a big damage push to kill your opponent out of nowhere. And oftentimes if you do draw it, it's just a brick in the face of things like Bazoo, Kaiku, and Gemini Elf. So I think that was a fine cut to do. There are other cards that you could potentially cut from this list instead of Cannon Soldier if you do want to keep it, but I think this is fine. It is a little bit unfortunate though, as Cannon Soldier does actually pair pretty well with the Momongas, as a Momonga can fetch out two more, which if you have Cannon Soldier in hand, adds up to 1500 damage out of nowhere. But that's kind of a niche scenario, so I think it's fine just to cut the Cannon Soldier here. So why would we go for Momonga in the main deck? Well, Momonga has a lot of interesting applications. As I mentioned, it deck thins, which is very nice. Bringing out two more copies of itself from the deck just lets you draw into your more powerful cards more consistently. It also increases your life points, which is not a bad thing in this format. If your opponent has to attack into all your Momongas, that's 3,000 life points that you're gaining, which can actually come up in a variety of situations. In addition, unlike a very similar card, Giant Germ, it plays very well against Kaiku, as, you know, if your opponent does have a Kaiku and they attack into Giant Germ will bring out two copies of itself in attack position, which the opponent can attack Kaiku into to get some banishes going from your graveyard. Momonga sets, so you don't really have that problem. And lastly, graveyard fodder. One of these cards can often equate to 3 cards in your graveyard, which is perfect for something like Bazoo or Skull Lair. Now, given that I've already gone through this deck pretty much in great detail in my last video on it, I'm not going to do a, in-depth card by card here. I'll just run through it really quickly. We've got 2 Bazoo, 2 Kaiku, 2 Gemini Elf, the main beaters in the format. We've got a Cyberjar to act as removal, a Jinzo because that's just a bomb of a card. We've got 3 Mystic Tomato to fetch out our Sangan Witch. We've got a Magician of Faith to recycle our power spells. We've got 3 Nimble Momonga, as I mentioned. This is our secret tech. And for these spells, we've got a load of powerful spells: Change of Heart, Confiscation, Darkhold, Delinquent Duo, Heavy Storm, Monster Reborn, 3 Mystical Space Typhoon as our spell and trap removal, a painful choice to set up our graveyard and get what we need from our deck, 1 Pot of Greed, a Raigeki, a Snatch Steal, and a Forceful Sentry. For the traps, we've got a Call of the Haunted for graveyard recursion, Imperial Order to shut off our opponent's spells, 3 Jar of Greed to increase the consistency of our deck even more and get even more graveyard fodder for things like Bazoo and Skull Lair, a Mirror Force, a Skull Lair, and 2 Trap Holes. For the side deck, we've got 2 Dust Tornado, 1 Heavy Storm to deal with more back row heavy decks. We've got 3 Fisher and 2 Torrential Tribute to deal with decks that are a bit more beat stick focused or aggressive. We've got 2 Noblemen of Crossout for things like Empty Jar that rely on a lot of flip monsters. We've got 2 Exchange for Exodia. We've got a Penguin Knight for Empty Jar, a Morphing Jar, and a Cannon Soldier. Morphing Jar if we're up against a deck that's doing like hand destruction, which some decks can do. This can be good to replenish our hand a little bit. Cannon Soldier, this can be good if our opponent is playing a deck that causes them to lose a lot of damage quickly. We can side this in to just win the game, potentially out of nowhere. Again, we've got an extra deck here. Probably won't come up, but it's good to have one in case it does. And that's going to be the deck. I know this was a much quicker deck breakdown than I normally do. Let me know if you'd like me to speed up my deck breakdowns in the future, or if you like the more in-depth deck breakdowns that I've given in my previous videos. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into the games. Okay, we've got a game against PJ Darkness, who is a new duelist on the channel. I don't think I've ever featured them before, so happy to have them on. We are playing the sort of good stuff with the Momonga. Unclear what they're playing, but let's find out. We are going to go first here. And this is a pretty decent opener. We've got the Momonga in the opener, which is nice. We can already start to get deck thinning and getting monsters on our side of the field. And Jar of Greed's also nice. So we're going to set the Momonga, set the Jar of Greed, pass. We don't really need to set the Mystical Space Typhoon. Yeah, that baits out like Heavy Storm potentially. But I'm fine with just the one back row here. There's not really too much that we care about using the Mystical Space Typhoon on against this board. So I feel like this is fine. They're going to fire a Confiscation, which is pretty rough. They're going to take the Sangan, which is unfortunate, as if they had a way to deal with the Momonga, we would have liked to bring out Sangan next turn to potentially get a search for another monster, but unfortunately we lost that option there. They're going to bring out a Mystic Tomato, and they're going to just attack into our set here. We are fine with that. It's Momonga, so we'll gain 1,000 and bring out 2 more copies of Momonga here. They're going to go to main 2, set 1, set another, and pass back to us. We're fine with that, which is good. That replaces our Sangan, which is very nice. We're just going to bring out this Kaiku, the Ghost Destroyer here. Unfortunately, they do have the trap hole for that, so a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. We're going to set this Mystical Space Typhoon just in case they think that we're going to set Mirror Force here, as they do know we've got Mirror Force, so we've got to kind of play mind games with them a little bit. We don't really need the Mirror Force on field right now, given that we do have these 2 Momonga, so we feel good about that. It looks like they don't have a Mystical Space Typhoon to blind snipe the back row we just set. Instead, they're just going to set 1, switch this Mystic Tomato to defense, and pass back to us. We draw another Jar of Greed, which is okay, but not the best right now. We're going to bring out a Witch, set our entire hand here in case they do have something like Morphing Jar, and attack into the Germ. It is Germ, so they'll be able to get out 2 monsters on our side, on their side of the field. And this signals to me that they're either on a burn deck or they're on Necrofear, which I played Necrofear in my last Android video, and I thought it was a really cool deck. So I'm excited to see their take on it if that is the case. We're going to pass back to them. And even though we are very vulnerable to a Heavy Storm here, it honestly isn't the worst for us. We've got 2 Jar of Greed set that we can use to draw 2 if they do have Heavy Storm. So we feel fine about this. They're just going to switch their Germs to defense, switch the Mystic Tomato to attack, and attack into our set. We're going to just fire a Mirror Force here, as they do know about it, and we'll constantly play around it. So I figure getting rid of a tomato is pretty nice. Main 2, they're going to set 1, set another, pass back to us. And we draw a Mystic Tomato of our own. That's pretty good. We're just going to attack into their set with the Witch, though, as we don't want to play into board clears. It's already risky enough with the 2 Momongas on field. Yeah, we do get a search with Witch, but I think it's just better to be safe by doing this. It turns out that's another Mystic Tomato, so a little bit unfortunate, but it's fine in the long run. They're going to switch their Germs to attack and attack into our 2 Momongas, it seems like. Yep, they are indeed going to do that. And they're going to keep our Witch on field because they don't want us to get a search, I presume. We draw another Jar of Greed. Wow, we've just drawn all our Jar of Greeds, and since we do have this one, I feel like it's fine just to activate a Jar of Greed, try and draw into something that can deal with this board a bit. We draw to Gemini Elf, which is pretty nice. We'll summon that out and try attacking here. This may be a little bit greedy, as if they do have Mirror Force, they can clear our board here. So we are going to switch the Witch to defense, because if we have an empty board next turn, they can get in for 3,400 points of damage, which is a fair bit. So I feel fine just switching the Witch to defense. We don't need to get too aggressive here, as they do have a tomato on field, so it's not like we're going to get in to attack their life points anytime soon. And they are indeed going to fire this Mirror Force on our Elf. We're going to set the additional Jar of Greed, pass back to them, and let's see what they do here. They're going to fire a Painful Choice, which can be really bad for us here. Let's see what they're going to send. They're going to send Jinzo, 3 Elves, and a Mask of Darkness. Now, we don't want them to get the Jinzo on field because that shuts down a lot of our outs to things like Jinzo in the future. The Gemini Elves are also aggressive pressure that we don't want them to see, as that would turn into a 3,900 damage turn here potentially. So I think overall we want to give them the Mask. We do have a Mystical Space Typhoon to be able to hopefully snipe whatever they get back off the Mask, so I feel fine about that. So we are indeed going to give them the Mask of Darkness here. And interestingly enough, that Mask of Darkness does show off an innovation that they're doing for the Necrofear deck, as Mask of Darkness is a Fiend. So the fact that they're playing this means that it's very likely that this is a Necrofear deck and not a Burn deck. So they're going to add that to hand, send the remaining cards to the graveyard. switch tomato to attack, and attack into our witch. We're going to get a search here, and we're going to grab a Kaiku that can deal with their Jinzo, as well as their Mirror Force and Graveyard, so it's pretty good to get here. And they're going to be able to attack in for 2,000, which is a little bit unfortunate, but we've gained 3,000 off the Momongas, so we're still feeling fine. We draw a Snatch Steal, which is okay, but we can't quite do anything with that here. So we're going to fire a Jar of Greed just to see what else we get. We draw an Imperial Orb, which is pretty good. We feel fine firing this other Jar of Greed. We're really digging for like a board clear at this point, as we don't necessarily want to hit into the Germs or the Tomatoes on their own. Reborn's pretty good, though. We can Reborn their Jinzo, and that will be really nice because we've got Mystical Space Typhoon in case they chain something called the Haunted to it. So we're going to think about actually doing that, and we are going to go for that. They cannot use Torrential here. That was a misclick on their part, I think. But we're going to bring out a Jinzo and attack into their board here. We'll attack into one of their Germs, take the 500, and we'll just attack into the other Germ. And I make a little bit of a misplay here. I think I probably should have hit the Mirror Force out of their graveyard, but I figure that given that I've got Jinzo, I'm not really that scared if they do get back trapped with the Mask of Darkness. So what I actually do here is I think about it for a little bit, and then I get rid of 2 Gemini Elves, as in 2 turns I'll be able to get rid of all the Elves in their graveyard, and I'm hoping that if they do draw Recursion, something like Premature Burial or Monster Reborn, then they won't be able to bring out a Gemini Elf to hit over the Kaiku. So maybe this is a bit greedy on my part. The Jinzo is not guaranteed to last, so it's a bit iffy, but we're just going to do that, and we set an Imperial Order here in case they get rid of the Jinzo. They're going to just switch the Tomato Defense, set another pass back to us, and I feel pretty good about this. I think we can wrap this up. We're going to Snatch Steal that Mystic Tomato, summon another Mystic Tomato, and if that set is something like a Mask of Darkness, I think we should just win here. We're going to attack into it with the Mystic Tomato, as we figure that it's probably a Mask of Darkness. If it's something like a Mass Sorcerer instead, then we don't take damage from that, so they're not getting a draw. It just delays our attack by 1, so I feel like this is fine. It's a Sangan, and they're going to search out a Karibo, which is another innovation that they've made to the Necrofear deck, as this is a Fiend monster as well, and it can blank an attack. So we're going to attack him with the Tomato. We're going to attack him with the Kaiku as well. They are going to use up the Karibo on that to prevent us from banishing from their graveyard. And we're going to attack him with a Jinzo. They've got another Karibo in hand, though, so that is pretty good use of that. And we're going to pass back to them. They do gain 1,000 here, and we're in a bit of an awkward position, as if they have a way to attack over the Tomato, they can attack into the Tomato, get another monster out, and that could be a bit worrying. They're going to fire Mystical Space Typhoon on the Snatch Steal, and that will also clear it. They're going to set 1, and they're going to pass back to us. I guess they want us to maybe crash our Mystic Tomatoes together, so that way they'll deck thin a little bit. But I don't know how I feel about that. I'm going to think a bit here, and I'm just going to crash the Tomatoes. It does give them what they seem to want, but it also works out well for us, so I feel fine about this. And given that they've got an extra Tomato in Grave, I think we will come out ahead here. So we feel fine about this. We're going to attack in again. They're going to get out a Witch, and we're going to grab another Tomato. So instead of attacking in to the Witch with the Tomato, we do know that their set is a Mask of Darkness here, so we'll attack into that with the Tomato, and we can get in a little bit more damage this way. We'll attack in to their Witch with the Kaiku, and again, I should have ordered this differently. I should have attacked into the Witch with the Kaiku first, banished the Mirror Force and the Gemini Elf, and then attacked in, because then they wouldn't have been able to add back the Mirror Force there. But I didn't think of it in the moment, and I'm feeling pretty confident here. Pride does come before the fall, so this could very much backfire on me. But I feel fine about this. We could set the Magician of Faith, but no point in playing into board clears. We're just going to set this trap hole, pass back to them. They are going... Oh, they realized that they forgot to search off the Witch. Technically, they should have added the card they drew back to the top, then search with the Witch, but honestly, it's fine. It's a very minor thing, and it probably won't matter. They are going to fire a Monster Reborn, bring back one of our own Gemini Elves. We did forget about this, so maybe the Gemini Elf play off the Kaiku was not the best here, as they could always just Reborn one of ours. But they will be able to clear the Kaiku if they so choose, and it looks like they are indeed going to do that. We'll take 100 from that. Main 2, they'll set 1 and pass back to us, and hopefully we should be able to wrap it up. They do have a Karibo in hand, though, so we won't quite be able to do it here. But I still feel fine about this. We're going to attack into the Gemini Elf with the Jinzo. So now we'll get removed, and they're going to Karibo our Mystic Tomato attack here. Now, if they draw Necrofear off the top, that would be really good here. But we aren't going to set the Magician of Faith because, again, if they draw into board clears, we don't necessarily want them to do that. So we'll have to find some other way to deal with the Necrofear. Luckily, it doesn't look like they drew into the Necrofear, so that is the end of the game. So a very good game one. I think the Momongas really did come in handy there at just walling up our field for a bit, and also gaining us life points to make ourselves a little bit more secure. If we didn't have the boosts off the Momonga, we would have been in a much more precarious position, but luckily the Momongas bought us time and gave us the life points we needed to get a bit more aggro. For game 2, I don't think we sided in anything. We might have sided out the hand rips for like Cannon Soldier and Morphing Jar and the like, because, you know, we're going second, so it's not necessarily as consistent, but I think it's fine if we kept the hand rips in. So I think we actually did keep the hand rips in, but let's see how it works out for us here. We are going to go second here, and this is a pretty great opener. A lot we can do here. They're going to set 3, pass back to us, and we draw Jinzo, which is pretty nice. That Snatch Steal plus the Jinzo will be very useful over the course of a couple turns. We're going to summon out this Kaiku, and that will unfortunately get Trap Hold, which is a bit unfortunate. We'll set this Trap Hole of our own and pass back to them. Unfortunately, they will Mystical Space Typhoon, that in the end phase. But luckily, that Mystical Space Typhoon's gone, so we can use Snatch Steal later without as much fear. They're going to bring out a Gemini Elf, attack in to our life points directly. We'll take 19 here. Main 2, they're going to set 2 more, pass back to us. And we draw Heavy Storm, which is really nice. We could just go for a major push here, heavying their back row, Raigekiing their board, and then like setting Magician of Faith for next turn. If they do have Change of Heart, that'd be pretty bad, but they'd only really be able to get back the Mystical Space Typhoon, so we're fine with that. And if they do just attack into our Faith, then we get back powerful cards anyways. So I feel very good about this play. We are going to fire the Heavy Storm, and it's revealed that they do have that additional Mystical Space Typhoon there, so glad we did that. We're going to fire this Raigeki, clearing their board away as well. And we're going to set the Magician of Faith, set the Snatch Steal here as a bluff. This also plays around Delinquent Duo a little bit, but I figure, you know, if they do use Spell and Trap removal on the Snatch Steal, first of all, it's a bit unlikely given that they've already used up 2 Mystical Space Typhoons here, but if they do it, then we can get it back with the Faith, and, you know, even if they've got it, like, the Snatch Steal would have died to Spell and Trap removal anyways, so we feel fine about this. We're going to pass back to them. They're going to summon out a Mystic Tomato, and they're going to attack in to our set here. It is a Magician of Faith. We'll grab back the Raigeki for later, and they'll pass back to us. Change of Heart. It's just insane. Oh, this is an insane board here. We're just going to tribute over the Tomato, got off the Snatch Steal for a Jinzo, and attack in for 2,400. We're going to pass back to them, and they accidentally draw 2. Again, it's fine. These things happen on DB. They're going to fire Forceful and send back the Raigeki, but honestly, it really doesn't matter much at this point. They're going to set 1, pass back to us, and Kaiku could wrap it up. We're going to Change of Heart their set, flip it up at the Tomato, and this will actually be exactly lethal damage here, so we will manage to win. So the Momongas didn't really come up game 2, unfortunately, but I think they were pretty useful in game 1. You know, it's not like the most swingy card in the world. Like, it's not going to be crazy in every game it appears in. But it can make a difference in some of the games when it does pop up. However, since it's such a subtle card to see the effect of in a deck, we actually did play another match after this, so let's see how that one goes. Okay, we've got a second match against PJ Darkness. We're both still playing the same decks as we went into this rematch right after the first match. And so let's see how the Momongas perform for us this game, if they do come up. They don't always come up. I mean, they are a very subtle tech, but if they do, it'll be nice to see the effect of it. So we are going to go first here, and this is a pretty good opener. This is actually a very good opener. We're going to set this Tomato, set this Imperial Order, and set a Mystical Space Typhoon as well. I think maybe setting the Typhoon was a little bit greedy, but if they do have a hand rip and a Typhoon of their own to get rid of the Imperial Order, I guess it's okay. But maybe this was a little bit greedy. They're going to fire Forceful. We've got the Imperial Order, and it looks like they don't have a Typhoon, so we're fine with that. They're going to summon out a Gemini Elf, attack in to our Tomato here. We will get out another Tomato. And then they're going to fire a Snatch Steal on the Tomato just to have it there in case we let the Imperial Order lapse. And then they're going to set 2 and pass back to us. We draw a Sangan, and we are going to keep the Imperial Order up, as we don't really have any spells to do anything here. We're not really that worried about the Snatch Steal, as if we do let the Imperial Order lapse, we do have this Mystical Space Typhoon to deal with that. But I think we can get rid of the Snatch Steal in other ways. I mean, we could just attack in to their Gemini Elf and crash that. But the fact that they did this maybe means that they might have like a Mirror Force, so we don't necessarily want to do that. We're going to set this Witch, switch the Tomato to defense, and pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Giant Germ. They're going to attack into our set with the Germ, and unfortunately for them, it's a Witch, so they'll take 200 from that. And they're just not going to attack into our Tomato. I think that makes sense on their part. We draw a Gemini Elf of our own, and again, we are going to play for the Imperial Order. As we don't really have any spells that we really want to activate here, I think it's better to lock down their spells for the time being. We're going to bring in this Gemini Elf, and we're going to think about exactly what we want to do, but we are going to switch this Witch to attack and potentially play into Mirror Force a little bit. We're going to attack into their Germ with the Witch, and they're going to bring out 2 more off of the Germ. I think this was a slight misordering. Oh, they're only bringing out 1 more. Okay, so this means that they have a Germ in hand. That's good to know. But I think this was a slight misordering, as if they chose not to bring out any more off the Germ, then we should have attacked in with the Elf first. I guess we could have saved the Elf to clear their Elf, but I think it was probably just better to attack in the other order. It doesn't really matter here, so it's fine. It's just minor things. We've got Imperial Order up, so they won't be able to activate Duo. That was a rough misclick on their part. They're just going to set one and pass back to us. We have the read that that is a Giant Germ there. And we're going to think about whether we actually want to pay for the Imperial Order or not, because, you know, if we do give them back Mystic Tomato, we can just hit over it with the Gemini Elf. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but I think it's fine to keep it up for a little bit longer. We're going to switch this Tomato to attack and attack in. We're not really as afraid of Mirror Force here because we can just set something like Sangan. We've got Monster Reborn for later, so I think this is fine. It is indeed the Germ. We're going to actually attack our Tomato into their Elf just to clear the Snatch Steal off of it, get out another Tomato. Maybe this is a little bit greedy, but it is what we do, and it looks like it's fine for us. We'll be able to get in. Oh, we actually won't be able to get in for the same amount of damage because they'll be able to activate Call of the Haunted. And we won't actually be able to use the Mystical Space Typhoon on that, unfortunately. So they will be able to get back that Gemini Elf. We'll just set a Sangan here, set a Jar of Greed, and pass back to them. They're going to set one, fire a Time Seal, which, you know, that's fine. I mean, we don't really care that much about Time Seal because, like, we've got a perfectly fine hand as is. We're going to think about whether we want to keep paying for the Imperial Order. I think now might be a good time to stop, as we can just Mystical Space Typhoon that Call of the Haunted there. We could also fire the Jar of Greed to see what we get, to see if we want to actually keep the Imperial Order around. But I think we'll just let it lapse. We'll Jar of Greed now because, you know, why not? And we've got a Gemini Elf here, so we're going to fire a Mystical Space Typhoon on their unknown back row because we can actually clear their Gemini Elf through other means. Unfortunately, even with Reborn, we can't actually get in for lethal damage here, although we could get potentially pretty close, so maybe we should have gone for the Reborn anyways, but I'm fine keeping it in hand to sort of save it for later. We're going to attack in with the Elf, attack in for 3,500 here, which is a fair bit. And then main 2, we're going to set the Reborn. This is more as just like a bluff. We can also get it back with Faith if they do use spell and trap removal on it. So we're fine with this. They're going to summon out another Elf. And they're going to attack over a Sangan. That's fine by us. We'll take 9. And we'll add this Momonga to hand here. Unfortunately, in main 2, they do have the Delinquent Duo. So they will be able to clear out our hand. But I think this should be fine. So if we just fire this Monster Reborn, bring back a Gemini Elf, we can crash the Gemini Elves and get in for 2,500 points of damage, and that will indeed be the end of the game. So, you know, the Momonga didn't really come up that game except to search out with Sangan, but I feel like because this is just a good stuff, be Spellcaster, Tomato Control sort of deck, I feel like it was just able to win off the back of that anyways, and it worked out pretty fine for us. Imperial Order is a house of a card, and if you keep it on field for long enough, it can be really devastating for your opponent. So I think that was a pretty good game 1. Let's go into game 2 and see how this one goes. I think we do keep in the hand rips. I don't think we side anything in particular for this matchup. They're going to fire a Duo of their own first thing here, and they're going to hit the Jar of Greed, and I think we're going to actually set the Mystical Space Typhoon here. We could have potentially sent the Duo, but I think Duo is more valuable. They're going to set 4 and pass back to us, so our duo is kind of offline now, making me really wish that we had kept the Mystical Space Typhoon, but unfortunately we didn't. We are just going to set this Momonga and set the duo as a bluff. If they do have like a Magician of Faith to get back the duo, that is unfortunate, but at least we have this duo in hand for later. So we're going to pass back to them. They do have Mystical Space Typhoon, so they will get rid of the duo. And they've got a Confiscation, so they'll be able to snipe the Sanguine out of our hand. Fire a Time Seal, which is fine by us. We don't really care at this point. And they're going to pass back to us. We don't draw anything. We don't want to commit a Cyber Jar to a board that already has a Momonga on field, so we're just going to pass back to them. We're in a perfectly fine situation. If they ever choose to attack into Momonga, we'll deck then, get out 2 more Momongas, and be in a pretty good spot. We're going to draw now as Time Seal has elapsed. We're going to set this Trap Hole, pass back to them. They're going to MST the Trap Hole and pass back to us. We draw a Jar of Greed. That's fine. We're going to set that, pass back to them. They're going to pass back to us again. We draw a Change of Heart, and we could potentially go for a Change of Heart just to get aggressive here. We're going to go for a Jar of Greed, though, instead, just to try and draw into something that we can do here. We draw a Bazoo, which is nice. We could get a bit aggressive, and it looks like we are indeed going to do that. We're going to bring out the Bazoo and banish the Jars. And we could go for one more here, but I just want to protect the Bazoo and potentially get over whatever they have. As given that they haven't flipped that up this entire time, I don't think it's like a Magician of Faith. If it was a Tomato, they likely would have flipped it up and attacked in, so I don't think it's a Tomato. I think it's probably more like something like a Defender. So I want to get over the Defender. And Bazoo is indeed able to do this because at this time, Bazoo, Kaiku, and Skull Lair could all banish cards, like any cards from graveyard, not just monsters. So we are able to do this, and we'll attack into their set. Unfortunately, it is a Tomato. They're just playing very cautiously here, which I think did pay off for them. As, you know, if they had flipped up the Tomato and attacked into a Momonga, then we would have gotten 2 more Momongas out of the deck, gained some life points. So I think it made sense that they did that. And we'll just pass back to them. That Witch is pretty good. That can threaten a Kaiku potentially, which would be pretty bad for us. We draw a Witch of our own, though, which is pretty nice. I feel fine. Oh, I guess we're flipping up the Momonga first. I guess we're checking to see if they've got something like Torrential, which would be pretty bad for us. But that is fine by them, so we're just going to get aggressive here. Unfortunately, they've got Mirror Force, so that will clear the Momonga. We'll set this Witch of the Black Forest and pass back to them. So kind of unfortunate that they cleared the Momonga through a card effect, but it looks like they would have been able to do that anyways this turn, as they do have Raigeki. We'll take the Jinzo because we can Change of Heart their monster and summon out Jinzo next turn, which is pretty good. They're just going to attack in with the Witch here, deal 1100. And then set 1, pass back to us. We draw another Momonga, and, you know, given that they've got Witch, and Witch doesn't really play well with Cyber Jar or Change of Heart into Jinzo here, I am just going to set this Momonga and hopefully get out another monster from deck off of it to tribute over for Jinzo. They're unfortunately just going to set 1 and pass to us. We could just tribute our Momonga, summon out Jinzo, attack in, but then they get a Bazoo and clear the Jinzo, so it's not quite the best. I mean, then we've got Cyber Jar to clear Bazoo, so it's not the worst either, but I don't know, it's just kind of iffy here. So we're going to think about this for a fair bit, and we are going to keep thinking. We're just going to set this Imperial Order, pass back to them, just in case. I think at this point we're just hoping to draw into a monster that can clear the Witch before we commit to the Change of Heart Jinzo play. But unfortunately, we draw another Momonga, so Momonga we have on field is kind of useless to us now. And I think this is a flaw for Momonga. Your opponent can play around it, and if they do, it can be really devastating. Just turn some more draws in your deck to bricks, so that is a bit unfortunate. They're going to attack into our new set here, and it is Momonga, so we will gain 1,000 from that, and we won't summon any other Momongas from deck since we have none. They're going to set another pass back to us. We draw Magician of Faith, which is pretty good. We could potentially Faith back a Duo or an MST. Not the best, though. I think maybe here we actually want to set Cyber Jar, and we do indeed set the Cyber Jar. We've got Imperial Order to stop it if they've got like a spell that could be difficult here. But they've got something even better. They've got Karibo, which they can summon and trigger a Torrential Tribute off of. And Torrential Tribute is another card that can sort of play around Momonga. Especially if you brought out 2 Momongas, your opponent can use Torrential Tribute to clear those pretty easily. And they will get a search off the Witch there, so they're going to grab a Jinzo of their own. they're going to time seal us, but I think that's ultimately fine because we can just set Magician of Faith. If they've got Change of Heart, we can Imperial Order it. So I feel pretty fine about this. We're going to set the Magician of Faith. They're going to fire Change of Heart. We do have Imperial Order. They've got a Mystic Tomato here. And they will attack into the Faith. I think we're going to get back a duo. Maybe the Mystical Space Typhoon would be better. It's a bit iffy. We are indeed going to get back the Mystical Space Typhoon. I think I'm trying to play around things like Call of the Haunted, which could potentially bring back a Jinzo if we discard it off of Duo. And they'll just pass back to us. We draw another Mystical Space Typhoon, so I guess we didn't need to add this Typhoon back to hand. But we are just going to fire a Change of Heart on the Tomato. They've got an Imperial Order. We'll fire a Mystical Space Typhoon. And they've got an Offerings to the Doomed, which is a very neat tech here. They're able to get rid of their Tomato. And they will skip a draw next turn, but they're in a pretty good spot. Now we can't bring that Jinzo out to field. So we're feeling a bit rough about this. They're going to bring out a Gemini Elf, and they will be able to get in for 1900 here. So we will lose the 1900. They'll pass back to us. We draw Forceless Sentry, which isn't quite useful here. We're going to fire it anyways. See what they've got. They've got a Jinzo and a Karibo. I think we want to send back the Jinzo. That's a lot harder to deal with than a Karibo is. So we'll send back that Jinzo there. And, I mean, it doesn't deal with their board, but we've got enough life points that hopefully we'll be fine. It is a bit iffy, though. They're going to Monster Reborn, though, targeting Bazoo. So maybe this will go pretty poorly for us. They're going to banish 3 from their graveyard. So that's a 2500 attack Bazoo. And they'll be able to attack in for a lot of damage here. Getting it down to 1600. We'll pass back to them. And unfortunately, Gemini Elf won't do it. We can crash into their Gemini Elf, but they've got the Bazoo for next turn. So that will be the end of the game. And I think that game really shows some of the downsides that Momonga can have. It can be a very good card in a lot of situations, but if your opponent doesn't play into it after they do know about it, then it can get a lot worse. And I mean, you saw in that game, the additional Momongas that we drew were kind of bricks. So it's a little bit unfortunate, but it is a flaw of the card. And it's part of the reason why I think it can be useful, but I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of it. Like, I do think it's an interesting tech that people can play. But I think going forward in the Beast Spellcaster decks that I play, I won't be using it. But it is a pretty decent card, as the last match did show. And we do keep it in for Game 3, as, you know, we got to test out this tech as far as it can go. So I think we keep the deck largely the same, as, you know, we don't have Kaikus in the side deck. Maybe we should put an additional Kaiku in the side deck to bring in against decks like this. But I feel fine with the deck as it is. This is a pretty decent hand. We do open the Momonga, which is nice. We'll set the Momonga, a Jar, and a Trap Hole, and pass back to them. If they summon our monster, that would be problematic. We've got the Trap Hole for that. But honestly, I think I'm fine letting them attack into the Momonga. I think actually I maybe should have set Mirror Force here instead to bluff them into thinking that I don't necessarily have Mirror Force, and have it on the board so that way I don't have to commit a ton of back row to board, because I don't necessarily want to Trap Hole whatever they bring out next turn. But they fire a Delinquent Duo, which is very unfortunate on our part. They are going to hit a Snatch Steal, which is really rough. I think since I do have the Trap Hole, I am going to discard the Mirror Force. This is a bit iffy, but I think it's ultimately fine. I'm happy with Kaiku as a beater in hand. I think it's a pretty good beater. And they're going to summon out a Giant Germ, so I think we are indeed going to Trap Hole that, as we don't want them to get more recruiters on field. So I guess the Trap Hole play did work out for us. They're going to set 3, pass back to us. Mystical Space Typhoon is decent. And we'll just set that pass back to them. I think, honestly, we could have flipped up Momonga and gone for an attack here. But we don't want to lose that Momonga. So I think that's why we do that. They're going to fire Time Seal, pass back to us. We're just going to pass back to them, as again, we're fine with just leaving Momonga on field here. They're going to fire a Dust Tornado on our Mystical Space Typhoon, and we do snipe a Mirror Force, which is pretty nice. They're going to draw here, set another pass back to us, and knowing that they don't have a Mirror Force makes us feel a lot better about just flipping up this Momonga and attacking. They unfortunately do have a Trap Hole, but the Momonga baited the Trap Hole, so that way we can bring out a Kaiku instead. So it looks like they don't have a Torrential or Trap Hole for the Kaiku. We'll attack in for 1800, and we'll banish the Germ and the Duo, which are the most problematic cards in their graveyard. We'll pass back to them, and they're just going to set 1 and pass back to us. We feel fine about that. We've got Bazoo, which is nice. We are going to summon out this Tomato. Again, we know that they don't have Mirror Force anymore, so we're fine with this. We'll attack into their set with the Tomato, and that will clear it. It's a witch, so they'll be able to get a Jinzo to hand. Very interesting. I'm happy they got a Jinzo instead of a Gemini Elf to clear the Kaiku, but even if they had gotten a Gemini Elf, we do have the Bazoo in hand to deal with that. So we'll get in with the Kaiku, banishing the Witch and the Mirror Force, and main phase 2, we're going to activate Jar of Greed, because that's useless once Jinzo hits the field, and we're just going to pass back to them. They are going to fire a Change of Heart on our Mystic Tomato, so they will be able to tribute that for a Jinzo and attack into our Kaiku. A little bit unfortunate. We'll take 600 from that, but I think we're pretty fine given we've got Change of Heart and Bazoo. There's not many things that can beat this, although we do know that they're on Kariba, so we might not want to make this play. They're going to fire a Painful Choice, and honestly, no matter what they send, I feel like it's kind of a lost cause at this point, given our hand. But let's see what they go for. They're going to go for 2 Germs and 3 Karibos, setting up their graveyard with Fiends for a Necrofear play potentially. So that is a little bit unfortunate for us if they do have Necrofear in hand. But I still think we're pretty fine in that case. We can get in 2,300, which isn't the best. Or we could just clear their Jinzo this turn and then go for a Change of Heart play next turn on the Necrofear. So, given that Karibo really messes up our potential plays next turn, we do want to give them a Germ. They've already normal summoned this turn, so they can't bring that out. And they're just going to pass back to us. That's fine by us, and I think this is a very winnable situation, given that they've got all Karibos in grave. We can go for the aggressive play here, firing a Change of Heart, and that will just be the end of the game. So we did manage to win both matches with Momonga in the deck, but I'm not necessarily sure that that shows Momonga's strength as much as it does the sort of good stuff Beast Spellcaster Tomato control deck strength. Now, I don't think Momonga is a bad card by any means. As you saw in one of the games, it did come in really handy. But I think in general, I didn't really like it in the deck. If your opponent does play around it, then it becomes a lot worse. And as you saw in a deck like this, some decks are playing Torrential Tribute, and Torrential Tribute makes Momonga a lot worse. So my final thoughts on the tech are like, it's interesting, it can be useful, it can come up, but it just doesn't feel good enough for me to replace 2 of the beaters. Again, you could definitely feel differently. I think that this is a perfectly valid tech you can do. It's just not for me. But what do you all think of the Momongas in the deck? Do you think that I'm underselling them and they're actually really good and should be must plays in every Beast Spellcaster deck? Or do you think I'm overselling them and actually they don't really have an impact on the game at all and they're taking up the space of much better cards? Let me know down in the comments below. I look forward to talking with you as always. And don't worry, next video will be back on the Android jank. I just felt that since there are so many ways to build the Beast Spellcaster deck in Android format, and it is the most prevalent deck in the format, I figured I'd devote some time to showing off some different texts to them in addition to my other jank videos. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.